The plane touched down with a jolt that rattled my chest. My hands trembled as I closed my laptop and shoved it into my bag. For weeks, I had been buried in endless boardroom meetings, suffocated by conference halls. My only comfort being the thought of returning home to my daughter, Ayesha. She was my heart, my entire world. 16, with dreams that sparkled brighter than the stars, she loved to gaze at through her little telescope. Every call with her ended with her voice bubbling, "Mama, come home soon. I miss you." And every time I promised, "Just a little longer, my love." That night, I didn't tell anyone I was coming back. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to walk into the house and see her eyes light up, feel her arms wrap around me, and hear her giggle at the silly souvenirs I carried in my luggage. But fate had already decided the surprise wasn't mine to give. It was past midnight when my taxi pulled up to our gate. The house was cloaked in eerie silence, the kind that makes your chest tighten. I frowned. Usually, Ayesha left a light on in the hallway, claiming it helped her feel less alone at night. But the house was swallowed in darkness. Dragging my suitcase, I rang the bell once, twice, then pulled out my keys. The moment I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine. The air felt heavy, too heavy. "Ayesha," I called softly, expecting her sleepy face to peek out from her room. No answer. I checked her room. Empty. The bed was neatly made, untouched. Panic began to rise in my throat. My heart thumped violently against my ribs. Just then, my phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. "Hello." My voice shook. "Are you Ayesha's mother?" A nurse's clipped, urgent tone cut through the silence. My stomach dropped. Yes. What happened?" "You need to come to City General Hospital immediately. Your daughter, she's in the ICU." The world spun around me. My bag slipped from my hand and crashed onto the floor. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I ran. The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and despair. My heels clicked furiously against the tiles as I rushed, guided by trembling nurses. My throat felt raw, as if I'd swallowed fire. And then I saw her. My baby. Through the glass of the ICU, she looked so small, too small for a girl who once ran barefoot through gardens, laughing as though life itself couldn't catch her. Machines surrounded her fragile body, wires tangled like cruel chains. Her chest rose and fell with the mechanical hiss of a ventilator. Bruises marked her arms. Her lips were pale. Her eyes were closed, lashes resting weakly against her cheeks. I pressed my palm to the glass, tears blurring my vision. "Ayesha, Mama's here," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. A doctor stepped beside me, his expression grave. "She collapsed hours ago. Severe dehydration, untreated infection, and delayed medical attention. If she had been brought in earlier, her condition wouldn't have been this critical." "Delayed?" My voice cracked like glass. "What do you mean delayed? Where was her father?" The doctor hesitated. His eyes told me more than his words ever could. "She was brought in late by a neighbor. Apparently, no guardian was present at the time." A chill swept through me. No guardian, no father, no family. The pieces didn't fit, but my gut screamed a truth I wasn't ready to face. I staggered into a chair, burying my face in my trembling hands. Guilt, rage, and confusion tore through me all at once. I had been gone too long. I should have been here. I should have protected her. But as I looked up through the blur of my tears, watching her chest fight for every breath, I swore an oath that echoed in the hollow chambers of my heart. Whoever failed her, whoever abandoned her would pay. The hospital's fluorescent lights flickered above me, mocking my sleepless night. I hadn't left the ICU waiting area since I arrived. My body ached, but the ache inside my chest was worse. Every beep from the machines monitoring Ayesha's fragile body pierced my soul. I kept replaying the doctor's words in my head. She was brought in late. No guardian was present. Where was her father? I reached for my phone. My fingers stiff from cold and anger. I dialed his number once, twice, 10 times. No answer. Each ring carved deeper into my heart, replacing fear with fury. By morning, I couldn't wait any longer. I left Ayesha in the care of the nurses, whispering to her before I went, "Stay strong, my love. Mama will fix this." The drive back home felt endless. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The moment I reached the house, I stormed inside. The same silence greeted me, cold and empty. Then I heard it, laughter. Not my daughter's, but a man's deep chuckle followed by a woman's giggle. The sound sliced through me. I followed it to the living room. And there he was, my husband, Adil. sitting comfortably on the couch, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a woman half his age perched beside him. Their closeness spoke louder than words. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Adil. My voice came out hoarse, shaking with restrained rage. He turned, his face blanching, then hardening into false composure. You're back. I looked at the woman, who smirked as if she owned the house. My heart shattered into sharper pieces than before. Where were you last night? I demanded. Do you even know where your daughter is right now? His brows furrowed in annoyance rather than guilt. She's with friends, probably. Don't exaggerate. The world went silent for a heartbeat. Then I exploded. She's in the ICU. I screamed, my voice echoing off the walls. Our daughter is fighting for her life, and you. My finger shook as I pointed at the stranger in my home. You were here, living like she doesn't exist. The woman's smirk faltered, but Adil's jaw clenched. He didn't even look shocked. Calm down, he muttered. These things happen. T-shias T-chengisepian. My voice cracked, raw with disbelief. She collapsed alone. She could have died alone. Where were you? For a second, his mask slipped. He looked away, guilt flashing across his face before arrogance covered it again. She'll be fine, he said coldly. And don't act like you're a saint. You're the one always traveling, always busy with work. His words stabbed me, but I saw them for what they were: deflection, cowardice, betrayal. That night at the hospital wasn't an accident. It was negligence. Deliberate negligence. I spent the next days torn between watching over Ayesha and unraveling Adil's lies. Slowly, painfully, the truth surfaced. Bank statements showed money drained from our joint accounts, not for household expenses, not for Ayesha's education, but for luxury dinners, jewelry, and hotel bills. Receipts with another woman's name. Credit cards maxed out while hospital bills lay unpaid. Each discovery was another knife, but instead of killing me, it sharpened me. Neighbors whispered stories I had been too blind to hear. Before, how Adil often left Ayesha alone, how she cried in silence when no one came to pick her from school, how she fainted once and he brushed it off as drama. And the worst of all, when she collapsed that night, he hadn't even been home. A neighbor found her barely conscious, called an ambulance, and rushed her to the hospital. My hands shook as I held those truths like daggers. The betrayal wasn't just against me. It was against our daughter, against her trust, her innocence, her life. That night, sitting by Ayesha's bedside, I held her hand and whispered, I know everything now, my love. He won't get away with this. Mama promises you, he will pay. And deep inside me, something shifted. My grief began to burn into fire. My pain hardened into resolve. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about revenge. Sweet, inevitable revenge. The steady beeping of the monitor was the only sound in the ICU, a cruel reminder that my daughter was alive but fragile, clinging to the edge of life. I hadn't left her side for days. My hair was unkempt, my eyes swollen from tears, but I didn't care. The world outside didn't matter anymore. One evening, as I sat stroking her limp hand, her eyelids fluttered. My breath caught. Ayesha. I whispered, leaning closer. Her lips parted, a faint sound escaping. Mama. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Yes, baby, Mama's here. I'm here. Her voice was barely a whisper, broken by weakness. I called him. I told him I couldn't breathe. He said stop pretending. He said I was dramatic. Her fragile words stabbed through me like knives. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay calm for her. Shit, don't speak anymore. Rest, my love. Mama will take care of everything. But inside, something snapped. It was no longer grief, it was fire. In the days that followed, I began to wear a mask. When Adil finally appeared at the hospital, feigning concern, I didn't scream at him. I didn't expose him in front of the nurses or demand answers. Instead, I put on a face of cold civility. Oh, you're here, I said flatly, as though his presence meant nothing. He muttered excuses about work and stress, his lies as brittle as glass. I nodded, pretending to believe him, pretending to forgive. All the while, my heart carved his betrayal into stone. The more I pretended, the more careless he became. And the more careless he became, the more ammunition I gathered. Late nights while Ayesha slept, I pored over documents. Bank transfers, secret investments, hidden assets. I dug into his phone, his emails, his messages. Piece by piece, I mapped the empire of lies he had built. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was draining our future, stripping away the life I had built for my daughter. He thought I was blind, But I was watching now. Watching with a mother's eyes, sharp, relentless, unyielding. Neighbors whispered more stories when I asked. The school principal confirmed unpaid fees, covered quietly by sympathetic teachers. Every truth fueled my rage, but I stored it carefully inside me, like coals under ash, waiting for the right time to ignite. Through it all, Ayesha's recovery became my anchor. Every time she opened her eyes, every weak smile she gave me, every tear she shed for the father who abandoned her, I etched it into my heart as a reason to keep going. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I didn't crumble. I planned. One evening, sitting by her bed, I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Rest now, my love. Heal. Because when you're strong again, Mama will show him what strength really looks like. He thought leaving you alone was the end, but it will be his end instead." And in that moment, I stopped being just a grieving wife. I became something else. I became the storm. The first snow of winter came 3 weeks after Ayesha woke from the haze of the ventilator. Flakes drifted against the hospital windows like small, patient promises. Ayesha's color had returned, colorless lips had warmed, sunken cheeks had filled out. She still trembled at loud noises and flinched when a hand reached out too quickly, but she smiled more now, small, guarded at first, then brighter. Each smile was a stone I set on the path. I had already drawn a path away from him, a path toward truth. I had learned the cadence of his life. Every lie left a footprint. I followed them. First came the paper trail, late-night emails, incriminating messages, receipts for hotel rooms and dinners, transfers to accounts I had never seen. Each file was a nail. I copied everything, stored backups on cloud drives with passwords that would make a banker proud. I kept one ledger pristine, the one I would brandish when the time came. Second came the allies. I called the one person I had kept at arm's length for years, Shirin, an old friend who had become a lawyer. I told her everything in a single, steady torrent: Adil's neglect, the hospital bills left unpaid, the untraceable withdrawals, the lies. She listened without blinking. Then she said, "Bring me the documents. We'll do this the right way." We did it quietly. No dramatic phone calls, no explosive social media posts. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing my wound twitch in public. We filed complaints, opened accounts to secure funds, and arranged a forensic audit of our household finances. Sharon moved faster than I would have believed possible, a woman with an appetite for truth and a low tolerance for scoundrels. The legal steps were surgical: temporary custody petitions, an emergency hearing for access to funds needed for Ayesha's continued care, a request to the court for an injunction to prevent Adil from dissipating assets. We invoked laws I had never known existed, pages of statutory text that suddenly felt like armor. Each motion had a small but powerful purpose: to protect my daughter, to make his hidden life accountable. But law alone would not be enough. He had been hiding behind charm and marketplace smiles. He thrived in polite company. So we exposed him where his currency mattered most: his reputation. I began calling people he thought he owned, the investors he courted with half-truths, the colleagues who toasted his name at lunches, the community members who believed in his facade. I scheduled meetings where Shirin and I arrived with evidence so damning that polite smiles dissolved into awkward coughs. Adil's landlord received notices of unpaid rent. Investors received copies of contracts that revealed embezzlement. His mistress received a discreet envelope with photocopies of receipts bearing her name and signatures. The mistress's first instinct was denial. Her second was fear. She reached out to him and found us already standing in the doorway of his lies. The night I planned to finish, the house felt like a stage waiting for curtains to fall. I invited a handful of people whose silence had protected him: his business partner, the woman from the community board who'd lent him credibility, and the neighbor who had brought Ayesha to the hospital. I also invited friends and family, those who deserved to see the truth, and those who had the power to make his life unravel publicly. He arrived late, dressed as if he were still the man the world had applauded, confident, half-apologetic, wholly unrepentant. His smile was brittle. When he saw me standing in the living room, a coldness passed over his face. The woman he had kept at his side that night, the same woman from the couch, sat a few chairs away, blushing at a humiliation I could almost taste. She had been told this would be a private dinner. She didn't know why she felt suddenly exposed. I didn't begin with theatrics. I began with facts, photocopies of bank statements, A chain of texts that read like a confession. Medical bills that had been left to accumulate while he spent money on flights and flowers. Sharon spoke calmly, her voice a metronome judging the time. She explained the legal steps we had taken and the one we were about to take. Petitions filed, assets frozen, a civil suit to recover funds and damages, custody motions pending. With each document she placed on the table, his color drained. "How could you?" he said, the way someone asks about weather. Distant. He tried to smile, to charm. It didn't work. "He left our child alone," the neighbor said, eyes bright with anger. Ayesha collapsed in our stairwell. We carried her out ourselves. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "We called the ambulance. We waited for an adult to show up. No one came." The woman at his side whispered, "I didn't know." Her words were thin, defensive. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," I said. "You lived with a man who chose convenience over his own daughter. Your silence is as much a betrayal as his." Whispers erupted among the guests. Phones lit up as messages were sent. Someone called a newspaper columnist, not to sensationalize, but because truth has a way of demanding audience when justice is being denied. He tried then to bargain. "I can pay," he insisted, but his words were scattered. Sharon's legal notice had already triggered an audit, and the bank accounts he used to launder money were locked. The assets he flaunted were tied up in legal filings. Those who had believed in him were already stepping back, not out of principle but pragmatism. Association had become liability. His business partner stood up, voice steady. "We can't be part of this," he said. "We launch an internal review immediately. If this is true, we will distance ourselves." The woman, the mistress, looked at him for the first time without the fog of infatuation. Her face hardened as reality replaced romance. She left then, not dramatic but decisive, and the sound of the door was like a final chapter closing. In the days that followed, the wheels we had set into motion kept turning. Banks responded with letters. Court clerks stamped documents in red. The community that had once smoothed over his absence now smoothed over his exit. He tried to plead, to project contrition, but the evidence demolished his platform. He found himself without the safety net of friends who valued his company over a child's well-being. On a drab afternoon, in a courtroom that smelled faintly of old coffee and paper, the judge read an order granting me emergency custody and authorizing an audit of his finances. The judge did not gloat. She was not there to punish moral failure, only to uphold the law and protect the vulnerable. Still, as her gavel came down, I felt a small, fierce satisfaction that was not vindictive but just. Justice had a texture, it was precise and inevitable. Adil's downfall wasn't explosive. There were no dramatic arrests, no cinematic confrontations on the courthouse steps. It was quieter, more devastating. It was being removed from places he had thought would always welcome him, having his credibility erode slowly, so there was no foundation upon which he could rebuild. Friends stopped returning calls. His business opportunities evaporated. The mistress moved countries. Creditors sent stern letters. The home he had once used as a refuge became his exile. Meanwhile, Ayesha healed, slowly, like a plant coaxed back to life. She attended therapy, at first reluctantly, then with the steady acceptance of someone aligning broken parts. She talked about the night she had been left, about the fear, the silence, the mechanical taste of beeping monitors. And each time she spoke, it freed a small piece of her from the weight of what had happened. She returned to school on a part-time schedule. She took up painting again, laying color over the darkness she'd seen. I watched her reclaim joy in small things: tea with honey, a book read aloud in the afternoon sun, the casual way she braided her hair. There were nights, of course, when the memory surfaced like a tide. She would wake, eyes wide, searching for a presence that no longer looked like a saving anchor. I would be there, always, a lantern in the dark. "You're not alone," I would say, and she would rest her head against my shoulder and breathe. Revenge had been a word that tasted like acid on my tongue, but what we built out of it was something else: protection, accountability, a life reclaimed. I did not revel in his humiliation. I did not savor his pain. My satisfaction was a quieter thing. The sound of locks being placed where they belonged, the certainty that no other child would be left because of his carelessness. Months later, Adil tried to reach out. His message was a thin thing: a text, a bouquet emoji, an apology that read like a press release. I read it once and then deleted it. There was no reply. there would be none. The law had removed his authority, the community had removed his platform, and I had removed him from the small, bright orbit of my daughter's life. On a warm spring afternoon, a year after that first midnight phone call, Ayesha and I walked down the path by the river. The sun scattered itself over the water, making it shiver like a mirror. She held my hand, small and sure. "Do you hate him?" she asked suddenly, looking up with that fierce honesty only teenagers possess. I thought of the months of paper and patience, of courtrooms and quiet, of the nights I had slept in chairs beside her bed. I thought of how many times I had whispered to the ceiling, asking the world to be kinder, and how I had instead become my own instrument of kindness toward my child. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate him. I mourned him, the man I thought he could be. But I don't want him anywhere near the life we are building now." She nodded, fingers tightening. "I'm glad you were there," she said. "I needed you." "So did I admitted. We walked on in comfortable silence. Later, she would run into her room and paint a canvas that took the light in a way I had never seen her do before. Warm hues of orange and cool splashes of blue, a tempest and a calm at once. It was a painting of a storm giving way to sunrise. The revenge I had wrought was not a triumphal banner waved at a fallen man. It was a slow, deliberate stitching together of what neglect had torn apart. It was bank statements folded into files and handed over to the law. It was neighbors who remembered to call when the house was empty. It was a daughter who learned, painfully, that being abandoned by one person did not mean she would be abandoned by the world. In the quiet after the storm, I taught Ayesha how to plant bulbs for spring. We dug shallow holes and pressed tiny seeds into the dark. "Plants forgive easily," she said, smiling up at me. "They grow anyway." I laughed, and the laugh felt like future. "Then we'll plant a garden," I said. "A garden that remembers to bloom." She squeezed my hand. "And we'll watch it together." In the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all. Not the ruin of a man, but the reclamation of a life. Justice had its day in the courtrooms and in the cold, calculating numbers of bank statements. But the real victory was a small one. A daughter who learned to trust again, and a mother who learned she was stronger than the person she had been the moment the hospital lights had flickered above her child's bed. We walked home beneath a sky that, for the first time in a long while, looked entirely ours.